We really believed that we had a business model which people needed, but we had no choice. It's a great idea, but you need to go get the license, but the license costs €1 million. So how do I get this license? How do we get started if we have no money?
CEO and co-founder of B2B Pay.
CFO and co-founder of Navi Payments, Neil Ambikar.
The goal for us is, to build a truly global payment solutions.
And this industry really needs disruption and companies changing the status quo. And this is what you signed up for, right?
I've lived in a lot of countries, so I saw a lot of these problems with global payments. And we how can we help small businesses cut down on all these international payment fees, these times, FX fees. So the iteration of how to run a startup without funding is that we started doing a lot of.
Today, I'm talking to a fellow Kiwi, Neil Ambikar, an amazing FinTech veteran. He's co-founder of 2 startups. He bootstrapped both startups. Amazing story in the FinTech industry. And today we learn that you don't always need to find investors and collect money to build a successful company. You can also do another way around. And Neil will tell us today how he managed to build these 2 amazing businesses. Neil, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thanks a lot, Sebastian.
So before we started record, we talked about you live in Europe now for about 10 years, grew up in New Zealand, but your family is from India.
I have, a lot of things going on in my life for sure. I think I've lived in 10 countries by now, so I don't know where I'm from anymore for sure.
You are a global citizen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, amazing. So you have a background in finance and accounting, like I saw on your profile.
I've done a lot of things. So I think I'll break down that answer in 2 questions because I get this a lot. The first thing is that, no, I did consulting. I worked for large corporates. I worked in audit firms. So I did a lot of different things. Yes, it's sort of financy stuff, but it's a huge industry, but I wouldn't say real finance or banking. And I guess the second question, especially a lot of founders is entrepreneurs is so you were in the industry and hence you started the startup, but actually a lot of the things I do now, I'd say 99.99% of the knowledge and skills were not related to my, let's say, background because the payments, the banking industry is completely different than what I did in the past. Yeah. More in the big companies and consulting side.
Interesting switch from the management consulting world to a startup and payment industry, which needs a lot of innovation. A couple of months ago, my brother bought something in Thailand using another startup, small bank to transfer money. And it took me 11 seconds that the money was wired from my account to this Taiwanese business. And sometimes when I transfer money within Germany, it takes days. Yeah. So it's a crazy world. And this industry really needs disruption and companies changing the status quo. And this is what you signed up for, right?
Yeah, first of all, 11 seconds, impressive, very impressive. Send me the details of this bank for sure. It is a really complicated world. And as you can see, it's even getting more complicated because we're having even more payment methods. Companies are becoming more global. And in fact, the complexity is just going up. We have cryptos now. We have cards. We have instant payment methods. They're launching new payment methods in different parts of the world every day. And as we become global, we're trying to actually, unify all these thousands of different payment methods. And it's getting more complex at the same time, more exciting. Well, if you're from the payments world, that, to solve these problems is, challenging, but it has its rewards. So it's I feel now even a small business is operating only a global business would be, say, 30, 40 years ago. Back in the day, you would have to be a billion-dollar company to be, operating in Africa, Asia, South America, Brazil, USA. Now you might have a small company from a village in Germany, which is using Stripe for selling directly to e-commerce guys in 200 countries, paying staff in Philippines, buying some products from China. It's becoming, more complex, but also more interesting, at least for us to solve some of these problems.
Definitely. It's what we do. We have clients basically in many countries. I have people in the Philippines, so I know exactly what you're talking about. And it is interesting. And I'm in business now for almost 30 years. Yeah? And when I see how I operated in the past, static processes and everything very local, it's a complete different world. So the world needs solutions like yours. So tell me a little bit about both of your companies and how you bootstrap them. I mean, they are global players now, so it's quite an achievement to bootstrap a company which made it that far.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a long and an interesting story, let's say. So I started in the fintech space maybe 7, 8 years ago. And back then, it was, especially in Europe, it was still very undeveloped. We didn't have, like, I think TransferWise and N26
Mhm.
or, Revolut, they were just starting up. So they didn't even really sort of exist. They were just coming up with their initial product. So back then, again, like I had, as you mentioned my background, I've lived in a lot of countries. So I saw a lot of these problems with global payments. And the first startup I had was called B2B Pay, which still exists. And the problem we are trying to solve is that how can we help like small businesses like cut down on all these international payment fees, these times, FX fees. And we ran immediately into the problem that, hey, to do what we wanted to do, you need like tens of millions of euros, because you need this license, that
Yeah,
licenses. And let's be
license.
honest, no VC is going to give you money just for an idea. So
Yeah.
in a way, like the bootstrapping happened more like we had no choice, because like, hey, it's a great idea, but you need to go get the license, but the license costs 1 million euros. So how do I get this license? So what we did to start with was that, okay, how do we get started if we have no money? So the first thing we did was we actually applied for a lot of like accelerator programs from big banks because we're like, hey, if you're with big banks, maybe we can build like piggyback on their infrastructure. So we first built a prototype with Nordea Bank in Finland. So they invited us to join their accelerator program in Helsinki. They also gave us like 20, 30,000 euros, not a lot of money, but hey, something to get started. And they
Yeah.
also gave us like the basic infrastructure, like bank accounts and international payment rails to say, hey, here, you can do a pilot for 6 months to see if your idea works. So that's how we got started, like by just doing an accelerator program with a bank. Well, if we had to do it, let's say the correct way, which is get the license, it would have, let's say, taken a couple of years. So that was like the
Yeah.
first time we got like, okay, we can start with some help with the banks. Then we also got accepted in the Barclays Techstars accelerator program, which was a little bit bigger. They also gave us more money. So we could really like try more product ideas. And so that kept us going for a while. But we still again ran into the same issue that, hey, without licensing, without like this big infrastructure that you need in the banking space, you can't really get more spaces. And this costs millions of euros. And we were again in the chicken and egg situation that, hey, we cannot get customers till you have the license. And then you can't have the license without all the customers and all the funding. So let's say the third iteration of how to run a startup without funding is that we started doing a lot of partnerships. So we really believe that we had a business model which people needed, which is that, hey, there's a lot of small businesses which are struggling with banking, with their
Mhm.
local banks, with doing international payments. So what we decided to was like, hey, you know what? Rather than trying to build all this infrastructure and, when you're in the startup world, like there is this like philosophy that, the first thing you need to do is build a product. You need to build like this amazing product, which is like super world beating. And then you're a real startup. But after a while, you realize, no, a lot of the focus is actually on sales. You need to first
Yeah,
get in the sales and the revenues and build the
exactly.
revenues first. And that's what you do the bootstrap way. So what we did on, let's say, the third iteration is we started making partnerships with a lot of banks, payment companies, and getting our own white labels where we are like, hey, look, we have a customer base, which we will bring. We will do the onboarding of clients, provide the payment solution, but the entire infrastructure was not ours. So to give you a good like analogy on this is that, like I love this book from the founder of Nike called Shoe Dog. And actually I read it
Yeah.
during this time. And, like one of the interesting things about this book is that for the first 7 years of, let's say, before Nike even existed, they were actually like a reseller of this shoe brand from Japan. And only when they like sort of built their revenues that they're like, okay, we are ready to launch
Yeah.
the Nike brand, which I mean, as they say, the rest is history. And we sort of did the same thing, which is that with B2B Pay, we built all these partnerships. We solved a major pain point for the customer and we had revenue sharing agreements so we could start generating revenue. And then when we got to the stage of like, okay, now we are at a stage where we want to build our own product. We want to get all the right licensing. And then we ended up setting up Narvi Payments, which is a licensed, electronic money institution. We build on our own technology to the point where, we can issue bank accounts. people can open a business account in 15 minutes, all done on our own platform. So
Online. Yeah.
we still haven't raised any money from investors by using some hacks on the way.
Amazing story. In today's world, what is the biggest issue or the biggest challenge in terms of payment for normal businesses? What do you say is creating the biggest headaches for companies?
It's such a big, I wouldn't like to be like, hey, every company has this problem. I think if you're just a basic company like a restaurant, you don't really
Yeah.
have a lot of payments. You're paying a few employees, you're receiving some payments, is not a problem. The big problem I see is with digital businesses and people who are like, hey, we want to do something a little bit more international. Then as we talked about a little bit before, let's say you're a small company. Yes, doing your local payments in your own country is fine, but like, okay, how do you solve problems? Like, let's say you want to start dealing with cryptocurrencies. Most banks will cancel your account if you get cryptocurrencies. You need to accept card payments. Okay, how do you maybe use Stripe, maybe use other
Yeah.
things? Then, okay, you're going to have an employee base globally and supplier base globally. How can you make, say, payments in Brazil via their local
Mm.
payment system? How do you make
Yeah.
your, big, let's say, Swift, Euro US dollar transfers to your big suppliers in China? That is one of the bigger challenges. I think that most sort of digital or like more semi-international businesses are facing right now. So
Yeah.
again, there's
Well,
a lot of different problems. I wouldn't say I'm
the
covering
biggest
all
one,
of
yeah.
them, but yeah, what once we
Oh.
see.
Yeah, but if you travel a lot, you pay in different currencies. Before I discovered this kind of digital banks, working with my local bank and transferring money to India once,
Mm.
10, 15 years ago. I mean, the fee I had to pay really knocked me off my sock. But building such a company, I mean, you described the process very well. You basically sort of had a kind of, worked in the shadow of a larger organization, building up the product, building up the service, doing white labeling, and then coming to the market with your own brand. Doing that, what was the biggest challenge in saying, okay, now we are here as an organization? No one knew you before, you only worked for this few organizations. So you had to really launch this to the public.
I would say that part, I mean, was the easier part, but not
Okay.
easier part because, like you turn on the switch and everything just happens. But one of the things, why we were so confident about launching this new product was that, and, building a licensing company, which is very expensive and required,
Hmm.
is that over the last 5 years, we were able to build like a strong customer base. We were able to build a strong like network of people across the world who we were solving a problem for, or they knew that we could solve a problem for them. And so we had already a huge network built. And I think the most important thing in the banking space is trust. Like
Yeah.
throughout these 5 years when we were working with whether it's white labels, whether with partners, I don't think we ever like misrepresented our product. So, people got used to the fact that, hey, this is hey, we can solve this problem for you and it costs this much and this is how it will work. And like in the banking space, that's the trust is the main issue, that they could see that we always solved a problem for them, and then what we said is what we delivered. In unfortunate industry, there's always you know fees are not transparent. People
Mm.
will promise, we can do all these things, and then in the end they can only do 1%. So the funny thing is we had built this like huge legacy of trust with customers and with our network, that when we did finally launch the main product with Narvi, we actually were like revenue positive from 1 month of starting, because we had a lot of guys say, yeah, okay, we trust you, we're going to open accounts. So actually that went, I'm not saying it's a challenge we have solved, but it's like, it's a work in progress. So we and I took a lot of the hacks we had learned from the previous, all the previous startups that I have done. So one was the network, the trust we have built with accounting firms, that, hey, if you have clients which have problems with banking, send them to us. We will solve it for them. We also, a lot of the marketing online is, you have to, like, for example, when you're in the banking space, you really want to align with the big players because that's how you sort of build trust. For example, we took part in the MasterCard program. So MasterCard selected us as like the top 5 fintechs in Finland to be part of that program. And immediately people are like, hey, Narvi, they're working with MasterCard. We should take them seriously. So
Yeah.
there are ways you can do this without actually spending a lot of money. So for example, to get into the MasterCard program, there was no money involved. Like it was just about telling them the story, like I'm telling you that, hey, this is what we do, this is the problem we're solving, having an interview and we got selected, but the marketing and the value this sort of, let's say, the program is generating for us is, limitless. You're getting effectively sort of an endorsement from MasterCard, which is a
Yeah.
global brand. So there is a lot of hacks we use so we still do all our marketing in-house, a lot of our SEO in-house, our PR in-house. But just by using all these hacks, we have learned over the years, like, what is it that our customers want and what are they looking for? And as I said, the main thing that they're looking for is obviously trust firstly, and then obviously the product delivers and pricing.
How do you stand out into the competition? What is your USP in terms of service you offer to your customers?
I would say that it's a big space, the payment. So I'm not going to say that, hey, we're always better than our competition, because
No,
there's a
of
lot
course
of
not.
different. It's like banks. There's like 5,000 banks. They're all competing. A lot of them are successful. So we focus on niche. So what we see is that 90% of the companies that are out there are not our customers. If you're a restaurant, there's no need for you to open up an account with Narvi. You can just go with your local bank. Where we excel is that we excel with digital businesses. A digital business can open an account in 10 minutes without visiting the branch, all online. So that's a big plus for digital businesses. So we give them a named IBAN account. We also have a crypto OTC desk. So there's more and more businesses which are invoicing in crypto that they can use our services for that. We also have an API. So we have a lot of customers which want to automate all their banking. So through us. So once they integrate our API, they can actually just, rather than having to log into the banking application, just make all those payments directly through their marketplace. So we focus on sort of niche industries which want to solve a more technical problem. So like, to give you an example, we also have a banking as a service solution. So for example, we have like a large lending platform in Finland, which has thousands of customers. So they will be integrating our API to issue like 1,000 bank accounts to their customers. So they can, bring everything under one platform and one banking integration. So we focus on more on hey, the technology and the services rather than hey, our product is for the mass market for businesses. And that also means we can charge more fees, which is also important if you're bootstrapping, that you want to generate revenues from day one. You cannot have this burn a lot of cash mentality that if you raise millions from VCs.
Even offering an API is quite an innovative solution, which not many banks offer to their customers.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, right? It's one of those things you think everyone does, but then you're surprised at how few actually do it. So it's still so small. A lot of these things set us apart from what normal banks do. And the thing is, our industry is very slow. So we have, let's say, big eyes, but it really takes a long time to build this. So this year we're integrating with the Swift network, so we can now also do more global wires for mid-sized businesses. We are integrating 20, 30 different currencies. We're integrating business cards, virtual cards. So it's slowly coming where we will have a product which is, let's say, even better than a mainstream bank, and definitely beneficial for our digital customers.
Sounds like a perfect bank for me. And in terms of building the organization, I mean, we talked a lot about building the product, doing it without funding, but you also need people. Yeah, you need a team. First of all, how big is Nari?
So we are about 17 people right now. So we're still small, but we are 17 people. In terms of building the team, again, because we take this bootstrap approach, or I like to use the word self-funded approach, because I don't think, we're still doing well. So it's not like we are living off ramen noodles anymore. So the main thing, is I feel like, when you are in this situation, you sort of wait till you're forced to hire people. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's like, hey, we still don't have any salespeople really, because it's like, hey, let's keep just doing the marketing, and for conferences, I'll go myself. We try to focus on the inbound funnels. And then once we are at a certain stage, we're like, okay, let's maybe hire 4 or 5 people in sales. So we are sort of staying small on purpose, because we're like, hey, we want to build the products and the revenues first before we hire too many people. I'm sure, when I see similar companies like us, we often see that they have already 50 to 70 employees, while we have sort of been like, hey, we want to keep still everything small till we like, okay, we really have to hire another compliance person. Okay, we do need an additional person in sales or support or IT. So we are taking like a more approach that, okay, let's play the 80-20 rule that we cannot do everything perfectly and
Yeah.
wait till the pressure is too much before we hire the next staff. So let's say it's not a perfect science we have right now in terms of growing the organization, but we're taking the approach that, okay, build the revenues and reinvest the revenues in product and staffing.
It's a slower but
Yeah.
could be healthier way to do it in this way.
Yeah. And I mean, it means you have to sacrifice stuff, like there are like a lot
Yeah.
of sales hacks which we cannot do because we just don't have the manpower to do it. A lot of like the things, that we could do better, or maybe that would even lead to like 10% more revenues. But yeah, we have to like sacrifice like some of our growth because we are trying to grow slowly. And that's also the reality in Europe right now. I mean, it's just so expensive to hire staff that you cannot, let's say you're growing in Asia, South America, you can actually scale your teams a lot faster because the cost of labor is so low. So it's not such a big risk. While our average employee would be, let's say, very expensive. So it's a big decision for us every time we hire a new employee and make a big commitment.
But you can have also employees in other countries and build up a remote workforce.
Yeah, I mean, we have to keep that balance. So obviously we are a very remote company, but we are still a regulated European company. So we have to keep the balance between, security
Sure.
and also like most of our clients are Europe based. And so we want to keep that European core. So yeah, I think it's easy to do in e-commerce where you can just, have an office in Philippines or somewhere else.
Yeah.
But I think for a bank, or what we are doing, it's important that we, have both from
Sure.
we have to think the security perspective and a philosophy perspective, that we don't just, go around hiring people for the sake of hiring in cheaper locations.
And when we look ahead, what's your midterm plan for the organization?
As I mentioned, like in the payments and banking space, everything is slow.
Yeah.
To get a license takes 2 years. You have to be very patient. I mean, 2 years is a long time. Most businesses go bust in 2 years. So you want to integrate with a bank, it takes a year. So, and that's also the reason why it's important to stay like, slow growth, because it's hard to predict when good things happen to you because it just takes so long. So our focus for this year is all about extending our product range. So we have like a really good product now in terms of like, hey, we can onboard companies in 10 to 15 minutes, companies fully digitally. If they get approved, they immediately get access to the digital banking platform, which has, all the usual bells and whistles of API, multi-user access, multi-IBAN. And now the goal for us is, to build a truly global, let's say, payment solution. So we're integrating as at Swift. So customer who's with us on their own IBAN, they can receive payments in say 20 currencies and send payments in 20 currencies. We are integrating local payment methods. So you can say, pay from your account in Europe in Pix in Brazil. So we will have like local payment abilities in say 50, 60 markets. We are, as I mentioned, we are integrating like virtual cards. So, like we have obviously a lot of companies which want to spend on cards also with us, which is obviously a little bit basic feature, but it still takes a long time to integrate with MasterCard. And it's not that easy, even though let's say everyone expects a card and has a card. And will also integrate some crypto services that along with a bank account, people can also convert cryptocurrencies to euro. And so those are like the main products we launched this year to broaden like our product. And then let's say by the end of the year, we have a product which we feel is better than most banks. Maybe we don't have the reputation of there, but I don't know many banks which can give a bank account which can do 20 currencies, send payments globally for an average customer. Of course, if you're a large customer, you can do everything. So once all these products are launched, the goal will be that, hey, we will start really scaling for sort of mid-sized to large digital businesses in Nordics and across of Europe. So that's the product first, and then try to scale the product from there on, marketing and sales.
And when you look back at your history and your career, what are the 3 or maybe 2 biggest learnings you would like to share with the audience before we wrap up?
I think the big thing is like things take time, and it's okay to take time. Like, when I first started in the startup world, it was like, you need to you're a failure unless you launch a product in 6 months. Like I think that, because there's this mentality, like I'll build a product in 6 months, you're going to scale in 2 years, and in the third year, you're a billionaire or a millionaire, so that's not how it works. So I think that
Yeah.
taking time, that, the first 3-4 years might just be a learning curve, that you're getting to know so much about yourself, your industry, so many skills, which, I never had like before. I
Yeah.
think that's an important thing. And the second thing is, when you have time, take breaks. I think that doing a startup or a business it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So if
Yeah.
you have the
Very important.
opportunity to take some breaks, take breaks and enjoy life, because work is always going to be there. So I think those are the two
Exactly.
most important things, which, like most people don't think about.
And we only have one life. Neil, thank you so much for your time today. Lots of learning, and I will definitely check out your bank and wish you best of luck, mate.
Thanks, Sebastian. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day and week. Cheers.
Hey, I'd like to make a quick announcement. I've got something exciting to share. As a listener of the High Performance CEO Show, you are already part of a community that values growth, excellence, and pushing boundaries. I created the High Performance CEO Hub, which is a free community where you can connect with me and other listeners, get behind the scenes insights, learn how to improve performance and efficiency, and find accountability partners to grow together. Go to www.thehighperformanceCEOHub.com and join us today. It's free, it's valuable, and it's waiting for you.